Hey guys, it's Lucy. So today I wanted to talk about a very short book that I finished. It's called Books versus Cigarettes by George Orwell. And Orwell needs no introduction. And this book is not a novel, it's not even short stories, these are essays. And in this 100 page ish volume, there are seven of these essays, and some of them I really like. So the first one, books versus cigarettes, he's done a very short piece on reading habits in general and the general complaint of the non-reading public that reading is a very expensive hobby. So he actually counts his personal library, does some maths, back of the napkin type of stuff, and writes a blurb a little bit, and at the end basically concludes, at least let us admit that reading is a less exciting pastime than going to the dogs, the pictures, or the pub. Not because books, whether bought or borrowed, are too expensive, which I think is still true, but maybe to a lesser degree, because based on his math and my math, I think books have gotten substantially more expensive relative to these various other pastimes, perhaps. But still, it's a very interesting topic, and one that is still current because I still get some friends talking about the cost of books and reading, and it's insane. The things that still that we can relate to 100 years later. The second one, bookshop memories, and also there's one on a book reviewer. It's just pieces that people who like books will relate to very, very well. The one where he's talking about the book reviewer, he's saying that job about that job. He, as a book reviewer, is not himself, but like a random he, is pouring his immortal spirit down the drain, half a pint at a time. That talking about just the enormity of the job, going through hundreds and hundreds of pages. I can't imagine having to do that for a job instead of as a pastime or hobby, reading the things that only you enjoy and want to read. But that brings that to light. But something that he says I think really struck me talking about book reviews. He says the best practice, it has always seemed to me, would be simply to ignore the great majority of books and to give very long reviews to the few that seem to matter. I think that's an excellent quality, relating to everything that we have in media. Like the problem is too much and having the distraction of too much, that being the issue for the audience, for the rest of us, having to filter in some sort of way, even the reviews themselves, right? All of this is very uncompromising. He talks about, light stuff like what I said about, books versus cigarette, the cost of pastimes. But also he talks about, this is the mid 1940s at this point, about communism, about patriotism, about freedom of speech. So that all of that is quite interesting for people who like opinion pieces in general. And then half the book is actually the last piece, which is a longer one. It's called Such Were the Joys, and it's reflecting about his childhood in a very raw way. So he's seeing his childhood from the lens of a child, of what he remembers, and also compares it with his reflections now as an adult many decades later, and comparing and contrasting and reflecting, and the interplay of time and maturity, and the rawness of understanding about many things. Children are very astute, actually, and that I agree with. And he talks about this a little bit, which I think it's very insightful. He says many people appear to forget the atmosphere of their own childhood almost entirely. So it's very hard for us to understand what a child really feels and thinks, because we've even forgotten how we felt like and thought at that time. And he also mentions not to expose your feelings to an adult seems to be instinctive from the age of 7 or 8 onwards. Even the affection that one feels for a child, the desire to protect and cherish it, is a cause of misunderstanding. One can love a child perhaps more deeply than one can love another adult, but it is rash to assume that the child feels any love in return. Uncompromising. It's very harsh, but I think it's kind of it's relatable almost. And he's saying, looking back on his own childhood after the infant years were over, I do not believe that I ever felt love for any mature person except my mother, and even her I did not trust, in the sense that shyness made me conceal most of my real feelings from her. And he goes on, but all of this is extremely insightful, and he does this, he talks about boarding school, about wealth, the wealth gap between, the kids, and how the kids view each other and judge each other and suss out, like a new kid comes along and how they judge that person. It's all very raw and all very relatable. It reminds me of things from my own childhood as well, some of which, I probably didn't think about until the moment that I read some of this. So it's a very good read, and for people who like opinion pieces, short essays, I think this is a very good dip into the Orwell mind. So that's it, and let me know if you guys have read any of these pieces that I mentioned and what you guys think about it. Have a good week. Bye.